Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Infinity Workforce Solutions Fast Forward webinar series. My name is Steve Kessler. I'm going to be the host for the program today. We've got a really important program today. We have some gentlemen from the U.S. Border Patrol that are going to speak to us about some of the issues that truckers and trucking companies may experience at our borders. And some of these are very serious issues. So I appreciate you all taking some time this morning to join us. You might want to just jump on the chat box down there and tell us who you are, where you're looking at us from, and maybe the name of your company. And by the way, during the program, if you think of a question you'd like to ask, please type that into the chat, and we'll try to get to those questions after our agents here get done with their presentation this morning. While y'all are jumping on the chat, I wanted to introduce y'all again to Mark Ray. He's my co-host here. Most of you probably know Mark from past webinars, but he's a 35-year veteran in truck transportation at the executive level. Mark's a licensed CDL holder, a licensed inspector. He's a certified director of safety, and is very much involved in trucking and transportation safety around the country. So having said that, let me introduce our guests for the program today. First of all, I'd like to introduce Tomas Carrillo. Thomas, I believe, is a supervisory Border Patrol agent, and he's going to be joined by Arlo De Los Santos, who is a Border Patrol agent, and they're joining us from Laredo, right down on the border. So welcome, gentlemen. Appreciate having you on this morning, and we're very excited to hear what you have to tell us. I'm sure our audience is excited to know some important information from the border. Take it away, Thomas.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having us. We do appreciate us being able to do some outreach with the community. A lot of what we do is we started a few years back in 2008 with the Texas Hold'em initiative. Now, what was originally the way it started was to try to get the community to assist in helping us combat alien smuggling, alien trafficking that happens in the area. So what we ended up doing was we partnered with DPS, and we found a law, and that law assists in cancellation of CDLs. But more than that, it also provides us a platform to do outreach and educate the public about things that happen in the area and things to look out for. So the Texas Hold'em initiative started in 2008 in conjunction with DPS, like I said. And the main goal of it was to do outreach and kind of limit the ability for people to do or commit human trafficking, human smuggling in the areas. So as like I said before, the main goal of it was to reduce it in general. Between contraband and human smuggling, that's something that is seen, especially in these areas. And so as it's progressed over the years, we have done a lot of outreach with several different organizations. We've done a lot of outreach with security personnel like yourselves. And it has helped because we have gotten more reports, and it does assist in reducing some level of the smuggling in the area. But like I said, and we were talking prior to this, there is about 12,000 tractor trailers that go through this area daily. So being one of the largest land ports in the US, it stays really busy on our end. So advising yourselves and being able to advise the drivers that are working for you of the dangers and things that happen in this area, and educating them and advising them of things that they can do ultimately will help with border security as a whole. So really this has kind of evolved into a very holistic approach to law enforcement and security as far as the border goes. So like I said, this is going to kind of cover, I think I've known this a little bit too well as far as the presentation, but it is to reduce smuggling and to partner with the community as far as reducing alien smuggling in the area. Those are the main objectives of our Texas Hold'em presentation. Now, we went into this a little bit earlier whenever I was talking was the transportation code. So we had partnered with DPS with this law. And what happens is whenever people get caught alien smuggling, or if they get caught smuggling some sort of contraband, their CDL gets canceled for life. So they go through a process. After they get caught, not only are they facing the jail time, the prison time, but they'll go through a process to where their CDL will be canceled. And that's something that our team does here. So in general, the Texas Hold'em initiative has been a two-prong approach. So the first part is going to be the outreach portion of it, and the second part will be the enforcement action of it. So it doesn't just follow the initial enforcement, which is jail time, but it does give somebody that cancellation of their CDL. So now they're messing with their own livelihood. So we know that a lot of the drivers go out, they spend so much money, or even the companies spend so much money for them to get their CDLs. Now that person can no longer work in the industry ever again. And it doesn't matter what state they're coming from. The law here in Texas and through the law in general, they can be from another state and the CDL is still going to get canceled for life. And that's kind of the way that's worked out. Now, as I said before, the alien smuggling, it ranges. It depends on what type of alien smuggling that they're doing, but they can look up to from 0 to 5 years, 0 to 10 years, or they can even look at life in prison. And one of the things that we want to prevent the most is tragedies from happening. And we don't have to go too far into the past to see some of those tragedies. We had one that ended up in San Antonio where 50-some non-citizens actually passed away from the heat of those trailers. And that's some of the dangers that happen with smuggling. A lot of the times whenever people are in those trailers, those are some of those dangers. And ultimately, not participating in it is actually could save a life, because these people are walking for days on end. These people are walking without water for days on end. And a lot of times we don't know what kind of condition these people are in. So a lot of times we'll catch people and they need significant medical attention whenever we're encountering some of these immigrants. And for us, it's not necessarily the immigrants, but it's also the alien smuggling organizations that are putting people up to do this. Now, the alien smuggling organizations down here, we can cover that here in a bit. Down here, they go through a process. They do try to recruit the drivers. And we'll delve into that a little bit more here in a bit. But one of the things that I do want to say is they try to recruit those drivers to do the alien smuggling on their behalf. So they'll offer whatever money, whatever vice, whatever it is to try to recruit that driver. So that way they can move the person or product up north, past our checkpoints, past our enforcement actions, pay the driver, but they don't necessarily know what the drivers do. Like, they don't necessarily want to be involved because they don't want to face the consequences, which is the main reason they're trying to recruit somebody else to do it. Now, what ends up happening is these drivers, they get caught, there's an arrest, and there's a seizure. Now, depending on what they're smuggling in, the seizure can be even of the truck, so it can affect the company itself. So we do seize the vehicle after the initial arrest. And then there's a process that the companies go through to either try to get it back or it ends up staying seized. But there's a whole process that follows. Now that case will go through the court system. Then once the conviction happens, there's a form that's filed with DPS, and the cancellation will happen following that. So I touched base a little bit on the recruitment side of it. Now, the recruitment here in Laredo, it happens in various places. The recruitment happens at especially places where there's drivers or there's hotels or there's gas stations. A lot of times it happens at the Loves. We have one here at our 13-mile marker. We have several other major gas stations in the area that are basically meant for the trucking industry. And what happens is there'll be a scouting around trying to recruit a driver to see if he can convince that driver to move up north. Now, one of the things that we do provide, and I'll provide it at the end of the presentation, we provide a 1-800 number that can be called 24/7. And if there is suspicious activity or if someone is trying to actively recruit, then call that number with any type of suspicious activity. And if it's an emergency, of course, 911 is the number to call. But whenever it's very important for us to reach out to the drivers and advise them that their pre-departure checks are super important. And the reason we say that they're super important is because those pre-departure checks can kind of prevent some of those things from happening. So whenever they go, before they take off from the gas station, they go look at the wind jammers, look at the doors, make sure everything's locked, make sure nothing was tampered with, and even checking the seals can help prevent some of those things from happening when they're not recruited. Because we've had it to the point where people will get up into the wind jammer of the tractor, and that's how they'll try to head up north. And then the recruiter or the smuggler will follow that tractor trailer up north. And then as soon as the truck stops again, they'll take those people out of the windjammer and then smuggle them wherever they're trying to get to. That becomes very dangerous because we've had it to the point where people go in the windjammer, but they fall out on the highway and ultimately end up passing away from it. So doing the pre-departure checks, especially in these areas, especially prior to the checkpoint, is extremely important. And that's something that we do want to convey to the drivers, that these things happen and that these things can happen. Now, as far as threats or things like that that we've heard in the past, I have yet to see a situation where the driver's not recruited, being that the fact that there's 12,000 people coming through here daily, if someone says no, they just move on to the next, essentially, because there's plenty of options. So we haven't really seen it to where there's been threats on somebody's life that they have to drive. No, they have other options. They say, okay, move on, and they'll move on to the next person. And what they try to do is they try to recruit drivers that are not necessarily from the area, because they want to recruit somebody that doesn't know any better. So they're trying to recruit somebody that's coming from Houston or coming from Dallas or coming from somewhere outside of Laredo, because they know that they should be able to recruit this person. So some of the ways that they do conceal them, and we'll touch base a little bit, is they'll go through the windjammers. That picture on the bottom is going to be a windjammer where they're recruiting people to hide in there. They'll also go through little hatches, the little side doors as well, or even in the undercarriage of the bed. Now, whenever they're in the cab, usually the driver's involved. People don't just get into someone's tractor without the driver knowing. But whenever someone's participating in this, they don't know necessarily who they have or where they're taking them. And that's where it gets really dangerous, because like these two girls that are in the bed of the truck, you don't know what kind of trade, and that's the thing where we're at. We don't know if it's human trafficking, human smuggling, or if they could be being placed into something even worse. We don't know the age of the girls. We don't know where they're going or what type of organization is smuggling them. There could be sex trafficking as well involved in there. But in our end, we catch it in transit. So we catch it while it's moving. So up until that point, we don't know what type of organization or what is happening from there or where they were supposed to go.
Now, Thomas, you also would not necessarily know what kind of physical condition they might be in.
Not from the standpoint of this, no. If someone's smuggling, the person that's smuggling them is not going to know what kind of physical condition they've been in.
So they could be sick, dehydrated. There could be all kinds of problems.
Yes, essentially. And that is a concern. We've had them to where we've actually had to do pretty much life-saving measures on people that we've taken out of a tractor trailer, because it gets hot in those places, especially in Laredo in the 100-degree weather. It gets really, really hot. So these pictures are prime examples. All of these come from the checkpoint that we have on the 29-mile marker, and there's plenty more that we can get from. But these pictures are people being smuggled in the trailer or in the cab, and this is going to be one of the x-rays of people inside the trailer. Now, the people inside the trailer gets extremely hot, and that's one of the things that we want to advise, is it gets really dangerous for these people, and the likelihood of somebody passing away from dehydration increases tremendously from them being in the back of these trailers. It's as if you're sitting in a sauna at the gym for hours on end. You're going to lose weight, and eventually you're going to dehydrate completely, because they're 130 degrees or more. Not only because it's hot in there, because the weather's hot, additionally because of all the body heat of the people that are also in there with that person. So it's something to be cognizant about. It's something to to be aware. And that's kind of one of the things that we're trying to convey is those life-saving measures is really just not allowing them the avenue of smuggling through those avenues. Another thing that we do see, and this is more for the security personnel, is clone vehicles. We do see clone vehicles of them trying to take someone else's logo or someone else's basically mode of transportation the way they do it. Like this tanker truck was a clone vehicle. In particular, it was meant to look like one of the oil field trucks. And there was thousands of pounds of marijuana in it. So it does happen in our partnership with the industry. And if anybody here would like to share any information that their company does specifically, could assist the agents in preventing some of these smuggling attempts with their own company logos. And a prime example of this is one of the companies that we work with, like yourselves, they only use Nebraska plates. That's one of mostly all of their trucks are registered out of Nebraska. So anytime we saw a Texas plate that didn't match the truck, we could see the truck with that Texas plate and we know it's a clone. And that did happen. And we were able to catch it, and that we were able to arrest the smuggler and the rest of the people that were involved in that one. So that's something to be cognizant, and through the partnership, that's something that does help us kind of eliminate some of those vehicles and help us to vet those vehicles a lot quicker whenever we're dealing with them at the checkpoint, is that partnership. So I welcome any of those types of tips with any of your guys' trucks, but it's usually those quick little ones like, hey, these trucks only have this, that usually help out quite a bit or tremendously whenever we're working the checkpoint and we're seeing all those trucks. We can see which ones are more legit than others. So like I said, it was a two-pronged approach. We covered a little bit about the cancellation of the CDLs for life, but our other side of it is the driver training. That's something that we do a lot of outreach and that we're trying to do as much as we can, is educate these drivers on things that happen in these areas. Also, we want to comply with the FMCSA regulations here in Texas and try to advise companies or drivers to try to limit as many stops as they have near the border or here in these areas. And then always perform those pre-departure checks. Those are probably the key to the whole thing, is the pre-departure checks, because they can't take advantage of somebody even if they're not willing to do it. And then that phone number, the 1-800 number, that 1-800-343-1994 number, that number ties directly to one of our operation centers here in Laredo. It's here local, the 24/7 number, and that can be reporting any type of suspicious activity in the area. So if they see something that, hey, doesn't quite look right, they're able to call that number and report it to ourselves, and we'll have somebody respond.
Thomas, if one of the drivers gets approached at a truck stop at mile marker 13, should they call that number, or should they contact their dispatch to call that number? Or what would you advise someone that gets approached and says, no, I don't want to do this, but I want to report this to somebody?
Yeah, I mean, we could even, it kind of depends on what you guys' companies, the driver can call himself, or whatever your policies are. If they're going to be calling their dispatch to call us, we're going to be asking some key questions of like, what were they driving? What do they look like? Where they're at? Those will be some of the main questions that we're going to ask, or if they saw any type of license plate, or even if it's a partial license plate, things of that nature. Those are those questions that we'll need. So drivers more than welcome to call, but if they feel better having someone else call, they can have that person call and give us the description following that. So that's one of the things that kind of depends on what your companies are advising their drivers to do. If they feel better that the dispatch calls us, really on our end, it doesn't matter too much as long as we get the information, we're able to react to it. But it kind of depends on the comfort level of the driver. If he's in a comfortable spot where he's in his truck by himself and he feels comfortable calling us, he's more than welcome to. And they can stay anonymous when they call that number. They don't have to give any names, any information if they don't want to. So I feel like those are some of the main points that we would like to get across. I hope that answers your question, Mark.
Yes. Well, I just, I I wouldn't want to put the drivers I wouldn't want to compound his problem by him calling and then maybe somebody taking retribution against him for making that call.
Yeah, and like I said, it's going to be dependent on like where he's at, his comfort level. It'll be a judgment call on his part, but we will send somebody out there to go check it out and see what's going on in those areas.
Gotcha.
And as long as he's in a comfortable space and a safe place, then by all means, if it's emergency, of course, call 911 immediately.
Thomas, sorry to interrupt you. That phone number that you have published there, is that strictly for your Laredo location, or would that number be something they could call no matter where, what border they're at, whether they're at El Paso, for example? Would that still help, or is there a different number there? Do you know?
Okay, so as far as the contact goes, that's our operations center, and if it's information that pertains to another station or another sector, what ends up happening is we'll take that information and we'll pass it to that other sector.
Great.
So it's okay for them to call that number. That's going to be Laredo specific. That's going to be here locally.
Right.
But if they're in El Paso, for example,
yeah,
and they want to report something, we get that information. We'll take that information, and then we'll share it with El Paso sector and send it to them for that information, or we'll just refer them to that other station or the other sector for them to assist.
that's great.
So,
that's good to know, because they may only have this one number and they may be at a different location. So that's good to know.
Yeah. They'll at least be able to share that information with another sector, and then they'll dispatch to the proper station or wherever it needs to go to. Because we have multiple stations throughout because we're divided into sectors. So Laredo sector expands all the way through up to Dallas, technically. So we stretch pretty far, but of course we're out down here down the border. But like I said, we'll take that information and we'll share it with the proper sector. Now, one of the things that people can go on to is they can go to the DPS website. This pamphlet will come up if they want to get any more information on the initiative itself. But they are able to log in and look at that anytime that they want. And it also provides some other numbers. If you see here in the corner, it provides other phone numbers that are specific to those sectors as well, if they need to get those information. So, like, kind of answer a little bit more. We'll pass it on to those numbers if they were to call us. But in the meantime, if they call us, we'll get that information. We'll just send it to the proper sector of where it needs to go. Now, one of the things that we do have, and this is something for the drivers and for security personnel, is we do have a Texas Hold'em initiative video. So this video is meant mainly strictly for the drivers, so that way the companies can train their drivers on things that go on here in the sector. It's pretty comprehensive. It covers a lot of the stuff that I covered already, and then it goes into depth a little bit more. So what we can do is I can play the video for you guys, and then we'll be finishing up the presentation pretty much after that, and we'll answer any questions that you guys may have.
Okay. And Steve, this video would be available to all of our clients, right? Through our platform? You're on mute, I think.
It's to make this available through our system. So if our clients are out there, you should be able to access it and assign it out through our system. That way you can put some test questions behind it, maybe, to make sure they actually read it and understood what they saw. And then you've got a good permanent record of them having watched this video. And I would highly recommend this be something that's done with some frequency throughout the year, at least once or twice every year. So you can go ahead, Thomas.
All right. Like I said, this video is for you guys to use. It's available on YouTube. It's just type in Texas Hold'em Initiative, and it'll come right up. If you just type up Texas Hold'em by itself, you're going to get a bunch of different ways of how to play the card game. You got to put in initiative, otherwise you're going to be a professional card game player.
Right.
So here we go.
The Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection is committed to gaining operational control of our nation's borders. To achieve this goal, one of our enforcement priorities is denying smugglers the use of commercial vehicles as a means to transport undocumented aliens and contraband into the United States. As part of the transportation industry, you've likely become familiar with United States Border Patrol traffic checkpoints. It's the policy of U.S. Customs and Border Protection to use Border Patrol checkpoints to restrict the routes of passage from the border area, creating additional deterrence to the initial illegal entry. Checkpoints greatly enhance the Border Patrol's ability to carry out the national objectives of the Border Patrol, which are to apprehend terrorists and terrorist weapons illegally entering the U.S., to deter illegal entries through improved enforcement, to detect, apprehend, and deter smugglers of humans, drugs, and other contraband, to use smart border technology, and to reduce crime in border communities, improving the quality of life. The U.S. Border Patrol has strategically placed immigration traffic checkpoints on all highways leading north, which are located within 100 air miles of the U.S.-Mexican border. The objective of the Texas Hold'em initiative is to reduce the smuggling of undocumented aliens and contraband in tractor trailers through increased community awareness of smuggling penalties and an enhanced partnership with the Department of Public Safety to disqualify smugglers from commercial driver's license use. This training is part of a public outreach campaign which aims to share valuable information with you, the transportation industry. The Texas Hold'em initiative began in Laredo, Texas, which is located on Interstate 35, the primary trade route connecting Canada, the United States, and Mexico. There is a common misconception within the transportation industry that smuggling is a relatively minor crime with minimal penalties, but in reality, it is a felony to knowingly transport undocumented aliens or narcotics. So what do alien smuggling and drug trafficking organizations do when they want you to smuggle for them? They may approach you at a truck stop, a parking lot, or any number of locations near the southern border of the United States. They may entice you to smuggle by offering large amounts of cash, drugs, or prostitutes. Smugglers know the risks and penalties involved in transporting aliens or narcotics and will not take that risk themselves. How does Border Patrol enforcement affect you as a truck driver? Drivers arrested with aliens or narcotics will be detained and interviewed while case paperwork is completed. Drivers will then be processed through the court system and will receive due process. If the court finds the subject guilty, the defendant will be issued a formal notice of conviction. Once convicted, a DIC-17 will be completed and sent to the Department of Public Safety for CDL disqualification. The charge principally used in these cases is 8 U.S.C. 1324 A1A2, which defines transporting as any person who knowingly transports illegal aliens in furtherance into the United States. There are two types of smuggling, nonprofit and profit. Nonprofit smuggling is one in which no money is gained and the driver is generally smuggling family members or associates. This crime carries a sentence of up to 5 years imprisonment. Profit smuggling is when there is monetary gain. The sentence ranges higher in these cases, with a possibility of up to 10 years imprisonment. Drivers who cause serious bodily harm to another individual during the course of smuggling can face penalties of up to 30 years imprisonment. Drivers who cause the death of an alien or others will be subject to penalties ranging from life in prison to the death penalty. Additionally, a fine of $250,000 and the seizure of the commercial conveyance applied to all 4 instances of alien smuggling. What crimes under Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration regulations will disqualify you from your commercial driver's license through the Texas Hold'em initiative? The statutes are found in the FMCSA Handbook, Section 1572.103, and include but are not limited to smuggling, immigration violations, distribution of, possession with the intent to distribute, or importation of a controlled substance. Under the Texas Transportation Code, Subchapter HD, for crimes that are committed in the state of Texas, a person is disqualified from driving a commercial motor vehicle for life if that person uses a motor vehicle in the commission of a felony involving the manufacture, distribution, or dispensing of a controlled substance, possession with the intent to manufacture, distribute, or dispense a controlled substance, and if the person uses a motor vehicle in the commission of an offense under 8 U.S.C. 1324 that involves the transportation, concealment, or harboring of an alien. So just how will smuggling affect you? Smuggling has affected many citizens within the transportation industry. Vehicles involved in smuggling activity may be subject to seizure. Subjects involved in smuggling activities may be detained throughout the investigation. And vehicles involved in smuggling activities may be towed and impounded by a third party at the owner's expense. Let's take a look at the different kinds of smuggling cases the Border Patrol faces on a daily basis. This segment of the training will highlight the reasons why pre-departure self-checks are so important for drivers in the transportation industry and will demonstrate the lengths to which alien and narcotic smuggling organizations will go to smuggle their contraband. First, let's take a look at marijuana. The most common contraband drug trafficking organizations, or DTOs, try to smuggle into the United States. Marijuana may be wrapped in large or small bundles. The marijuana is often concealed in plastic packing wrap, packaging tape, trash bags, burlap sacks, suitcases, or duffel bags. Sometimes the narcotics are concealed within the commodity or will be covered with tar, coffee, or other chemicals to try to mask their distinctive odor. Smuggling organizations will exploit anyone that gives in to their recruiting tactics. Age, race, and sex don't play a part in the smuggler's choice when selecting a driver, since anyone who would drive for them would be a good recruit. Even if you're not from the border region, you should become familiar with your work area and your conveyance. This image of an elderly lady intercepted at a port of entry demonstrates the complete disregard DTOs have for human rights and their use of extreme smuggling tactics. Men and women, young and old, and from every cultural background should be aware of smuggling issues along the southwest border region, of the federal and state motor carrier regulations, and know there is a zero-tolerance policy for smuggling in today's American transportation industry. Since June 2008, when the Texas Hold'em initiative began, men and women have been sitting through trainings just like today's, yet some drivers still choose to smuggle. Money has convinced many of them to smuggle, even after hearing about the life-altering consequences. In all of these cases, the drivers never enjoyed a penny of their much-anticipated payoff, since all currency is seized by the U.S. government. We recommend drivers always check their seals and bills of lading, verifying that all information is correct. Trailer length and weight are important factors when trying to pinpoint any discrepancies during your daily duties. An empty trailer that weighs in heavier than normal should serve as an indicator of something suspicious. You work day in and day out with your commercial vehicle equipment, and it's recommended you become familiar with the standard weights and lengths of your vehicles. A lot of companies we visit with even mandate drivers to provide a padlock for the trailer when it's traveling empty to ensure it's not tampered with in transit or during driver breaks. A 53-foot dry van trailer that's not holding an entire load due to missing floor space should serve as a possible indicator of a false wall compartment. When drivers perform their pre-departure security self-checks, we also recommend inspecting all toolboxes, external storage areas, and external windjammer openings for signs of intruders. These pictures show examples of how illegal aliens can position themselves in the windjammer area above the cab. It may be difficult to see into the windjammer prior to departure, but signs of an intruder should be easy to recognize. Look to see if there are footprints, smudges, or other types of marks left behind from people climbing into the windjammer. Illegal aliens may also climb into less expected areas, like toolboxes and side cab compartments if left unlocked. Remember always to lock all doors before leaving your cab unattended. When leaving your truck to take a break, even if only for a few moments, it's highly recommended you always lock the cabin doors to protect your vehicle from intruders. The inside cabin of your truck offers many hiding spots for unwelcome passengers or contraband. Prior to departure, be sure to check closets, storage compartments, cabinets, underbed storage, and bunk bed areas. Items out of place or missing items could be indicators someone has entered your truck cab and placed an item or people inside. In this case, we ask you to consider, what would have happened to the subjects if the driver needed to brake suddenly? The subjects would likely have been killed under the pressure of the shifting load. The driver would have faced life in prison up to the death penalty had the aliens died while under his care. In this instance, the smuggler had no regard for the infant's safety. The child was not placed in any safety restraining device. This subject was being smuggled in the rear section of the trailer, and she was 8 months pregnant. She was lying down in the hottest portion of the trailer and could only hold on to the top frame. Take a look at this underbed storage area. We ask you today, what types of chemicals and solvents do you keep in that storage area? Those solvents, if inhaled, could cause serious bodily harm to any person hiding in the underbed compartment. The driver, as you learned today, could face up to 20 years in federal prison for causing serious bodily harm to another. Another important factor in this case is the age of the girls shown. You as drivers should now pause to think about the smuggler's intentions. Could this child possibly be part of the sex trafficking or child pornography trades? Could this child have possibly been kidnapped? Our partnership with the Texas Department of Transportation led to the donation of 2 highway signs, which have been placed at the U.S. Border Patrol checkpoints located on Interstate 35 and U.S. Highway 83. The signs display the number of CDLs disqualified to date since the Texas Hold'em initiative began in June 2008. Remember, don't become a number. DHS encourages all citizens to report suspicious activity to local law enforcement or 911. To learn more about the Texas Hold'em initiative, visit the Texas Department of Public Safety website.
America, it's time to turn the page and choose a new leader.
Wow, that's a pretty amazing video. I even looked at it before, and I think it got to me more this time than it did last time.
That's obviously something our clients need to share with their drivers and their dispatch, I guess their entire organization, I would think, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, part of what we do here at Vertical Alliance Group and the Infinity Workforce Solutions is a platform for training. And I know we've got some folks here today that are not our customers. So I'm going to pop up a little poll here on the screen. If you're interested in getting a demo of our system or want a way where you can quickly get access to this training and document that people have seen it, we'd be happy to reach out to you and make sure that you can get access to this information and have a nice, convenient way to train your drivers and also document that they've completed the training. So a couple of questions that popped into my head, Thomas. You've talked quite a bit about, obviously it's human smuggling, and that's obviously a huge problem. Are the drivers even, let's just say that they were completely, totally unaware that they had a passenger, and maybe they didn't do that proper pre-trip before they took off. Are they still liable even if they had no knowledge that this person was on there? Especially if something happens, if they're sick or they die? Or is that something the courts have to sort out?
Honestly, the initial part of it is going to be the arrests. They are going to get arrested because obviously there is something there. We have a probable cause that something's happening. But what happens is it goes through an investigation. So like any other case, it gets adjudicated if they're involved. If they're not involved, the investigation follows immediately after. So they'll go through that process up until it's determined, yes, this person had no knowledge or this person did have knowledge. And then it'll take the proper channels from there. But most of the time, whenever somebody has somebody with them as a passenger, they usually know, especially down here in these areas.
Okay. Mark, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I know, Thomas, you and Arlo have worked at checkpoint. It's almost a daily occurrence that you see either smuggling or contraband going through that checkpoint. Is that a fair statement?
No, 100%, yes, sir.
It's every day.
I mean, yeah. I had the experience of working it as an agent and being the one catching it, to managing or being the supervisor at that checkpoint and dealing with multiple cases that the agents are catching. And it's not unheard of for them to catch multiple cases within a shift.
Wow.
So
So it's just ongoing day and night. Now, if some of our clients would like to communicate with you directly and maybe have their own internal webinar or Zoom meeting or something like that, do you have would they call this number here, or do you have a direct? Oh, there it is. Okay. Carlos, Thomas. Okay. Either three of those.
Any three of us will do, and we also have a group email, which I'll put into the chat if that's all right. It's going to be LRT.
And part
so
of
that email address,
yeah, I see
that email address that's in the chat, that'll connect you to all of our group. So it'll connect you to our team. And if they're interested in us giving another training or another webinar training like this, we'd be more than happy to, or even going to their place of business, depends on what they have going on. We have no problem doing that. That's part of one of the things that we are wanting to do as much as we can, is the outreach portion.
And the losing your CDL, that's not limited to Texas CDL holders. That's Ohio, Michigan, Ontario, anywhere.
Yes. If they're coming here and they get caught smuggling in the state of Texas, it doesn't matter where that CDL is from. They can lose it. Yes.
And if you're out of state, you're actually a target.
Whenever for recruitment, well, it can happen. If you're out of this area, from like those that are not from Laredo, they usually try to approach those people first.
Yeah,
Like, so anybody from Houston, from Dallas, from someplace else.
Or
Because
Chicago,
those people,
yeah.
Those people aren't as well versed as what goes on here.
So the benefit is to exchange this information with your drivers to let them aware this is the reality of the border region.
Yes, sir. And that's kind of one of the main things is.
Thomas, I don't know if you're seeing that on the chat, but we have a question about whether or not it's possible to tour the border crossing as someone from a transportation company to get more knowledge on what to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I know, and that's something that we can coordinate. That's definitely something that is done in the past and we can do in the future. So,
Okay.
like I said, they can reach out to that number if they're interested in doing something like that, and we'd be more than welcome to coordinate something for them.
It would be interesting and an eye opener, that's for sure. I think you've already kind of touched on it. Some of this recruitment, it's preferable that it happens farther away from the border. I mean, literally, it could be somebody approached that's in New York that's heading south to the border. They might be approached about this sort of thing, that far away even.
So it does happen. A lot
Yeah.
of times, I'm not going to say that it doesn't, because some of these organizations do stretch out throughout the United States.
Yeah.
But most of the time, most of the ones that we're seeing here as of late have been those that are stopping at these stops at these places here locally, and
Close
then
by.
but
Yeah.
they do have organizations that stretch nationwide.
I noticed your video was counting how many CDLs had been disqualified. Do you know what that number is today?
847.
847. Oh my gosh. That's
with 100
unbelievable.
people right now pending.
And then we have another 100 that we're looking at canceling, depending on what the court proceedings happen.
Wow.
So we got another 100 candidates at this point.
And
that we're tracking.
those are the ones that got caught.
Yep.
And those are just counting those. Like I said, we have the B1, B2 crossers, which those immediately get, cut off, and those people can't even cross into the United States anymore. They lose all that privilege. These are just counting the U.S. CDLs. We have
US
our
CDL
numbers
holders.
would be way higher if we would count all these other B1,
Sectors.
B2s, and all this, and all the other sectors as well.
Yeah.
And that's just for our area. That 847's our sector alone.
I have a question here. Somebody's asking, have you found many Canadian carriers involved in recruitment?
Typically, no. It's very rare for us to catch someone who's a Canadian driver, a Canadian CDL holder. They usually don't get involved for the most part with smuggling organizations. It does happen on occasion, but it's more of the rarity rather than the rule. So it's a very rare thing to happen, but it does happen from time to time, but it's not the norm by far.
I got to ask this question: if I'm approached at a truck stop in Laredo to take something or somebody to San Antonio, how much money could I expect to make?
Depends on what you're smuggling and how far you're going. So they offer a lot of money. They offer from anywhere from a couple hundred all the way up into tens of thousands to offer,
Wow.
depending on what they're doing. But keep in mind that that driver is taking the brunt of the
risk.
The risk, mainly because they're also charging 10 to 15,000 a person to smuggle. So we were talking to one of the people that we had caught one time, and they were only paying him about $2,000 or $3,000, but he had about 20 people inside the trailer of his tractor, and each one of those people was paying about $10,000 to $13,000 to be smuggled. Actually, it was about $8,000 to $12,000 to be smuggled across. So at that point, he ended up wanting to give a lot more information, and we were giving him, passing him off to the investigative arm of what we were doing. So at that point, we had to pass him off because he wanted to give a lot of information about the smuggling organizations and stuff.
So you can make a lot of quick cash.
Yeah, and they do, but they also take the risk. So that guy ended up getting several years in prison, as well as,
Yeah, I think
Steve,
I think the gap is we've just got to reach out and network with our drivers to let them know what that risk is, because I'm assuming a lot of them do not know what that risk is. So
Yeah, I really thought that was the prime benefit of this program, because I think there, like you said, Mark, there are a lot that just don't know how crafty these people are and the techniques that they use. And the more we can let them know what to look for and, be on alert the whole time to make sure you don't get caught up in something that could be devastating to you, and gosh, to be involved in injuring some other people, that would just, it's going to be very important that we all train our drivers as much as possible how to act and behave and be alert around the borders. So I don't see any other questions. Mark, did you have anything else?
no, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that video that Thomas and Arlo put together is available through our network and our learning platform, and I would encourage you to get that out this afternoon if you or before the holidays for sure.
Yeah.
Just so that your drivers understand the realities of what's going on down there. And I really do want to put out a thank you beyond thank yous to our partners at the Border Patrol and the work that y'all do for us.
Yeah, same from me. Thank you all very much for joining us. Myself, and I'm sure everybody that was tuned in today, appreciate what y'all do there. You put yourselves at risk doing what you do, and thank you very much for that.
I would even ask the participants on the chat to send a thank you to these gentlemen and their coworkers. So
yeah. So Tomas and Arlo, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I'm hoping maybe to get you guys to join us again down the road on another webinar, and we can reach out to another group of folks. So once again, thank you. I see a lot of thank yous popping into the chat now. So appreciate you all very much. Be safe, and we'll see all of you that joined us on the webinar on the next program. Thomas, Arlo, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for having us, and we do appreciate it. And if you all ever need anything, you have our contact info or can get it.
Fantastic. Appreciate you guys. Thank you all very much for joining us.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.